The perception is that gluten-free foods are inherently healthier or even cleaner. But the truth is that gluten-free foods may be among the most deceptively marketed and most chemically contaminated foods in the grocery store. I'm always interested in the scientific data conducted by other labs, even in other countries, looking at the food supply and checking for contaminants. And recently, when I got my hands on some data from the Canadian government, I was really shocked because they had developed a method to look for glyphosate and measure it in parts per billion concentrations in a variety of different foods, including gluten-free foods. They also tested lentils and beans and other things, and they tested it by country as well, so they have a breakdown of country by country. What are the levels of glyphosate, that is Roundup typically, that's found in the foods that they tested. And one of the most shocking and surprising results that came out of this testing is that gluten-free foods had a shockingly high level of glyphosate across 118 different products that they tested off the shelf. Across these 118 gluten-free products, they found the average parts per billion of glyphosate was 477. That's almost half a part per million of glyphosate, which is known to be a carcinogenic chemical. There's also substantial research showing that glyphosate is disruptive to normal human biology at even sub-parts per billion concentrations. In other words, even at parts per trillion concentrations, it can harm your body in ways that are only now beginning to be understood. A lot of people choose gluten-free foods because they've had bad experiences eating wheat products. But it may not be the gluten for many people. It could be the glyphosate in the wheat, because you see, wheat is very often sprayed with glyphosate. It's used as a desiccant, a drying chemical in chemical agriculture. And so farmers spray entire fields of wheat with glyphosate, also known as Roundup, one of the brand names of it, in order to dry that wheat more quickly so that they reduce their risk of rain or other weather events spoiling their wheat crop. So they spray it with chemicals, they saturate the wheat with glyphosate, and then they harvest it and they're able to obtain more profit from it. But the glyphosate saturates the wheat kernels, and it ends up inside the wheat products that people are consuming, whether it's bread or bagels or donuts or cake mixes or pasta, whatever. If it's made out of wheat and the wheat isn't organic, it very likely contains glyphosate, and not just a little, but a lot. And that glyphosate persists through food processing. It survives the spraying and the harvesting and also the milling of the wheat grains. And it survives baking and cooking and mixing and blending and refining and all these things. And it even survives in the bodies of the people who consume those wheat products. So you can test their urine or blood and you can find glyphosate still in their bodies. So many of those people mistakenly believe that they are allergic to gluten, and so they read about gluten online and they think, gosh, you know, I'm having stomach aches and I'm having perhaps gastrointestinal disorders or vomiting or headaches or who knows what kinds of problems, and they attribute that to gluten, and then they go to gluten-free foods. Well, I'm here to tell them that your gluten-free foods, unless they are certified organic or perhaps non-GMO project verified, those gluten-free foods could be giving you more glyphosate than the wheat products that you were trying to escape in the first place. So you might be leaping out of the frying pan and into the fire, so to speak. You might be escaping glyphosate in wheat products and thinking you're allergic to gluten, but you end up getting just as much or even more glyphosate from your gluten-free products because they are not organic in most cases. A lot of people buy gluten-free and they just look for the gluten-free label, but they don't look for the organic label. And if it's not organic, it can come from genetically modified corn, and usually does, and it can be sprayed with glyphosate, and it usually is. So non-organic gluten-free foods can be extremely toxic to the human body when consumed over a very long period of time. It can disrupt hormones, it can disrupt digestion, it can even cause cancer, different types of cancer, not just one kind. So for people who are shopping for gluten-free foods, they need to understand the real science behind what they're buying and why are they buying it. And frankly, I would encourage people to go back to wheat products and try organic wheat first. Try wheat that hasn't been sprayed with glyphosate and see if you can handle organic wheat with gluten in it, because it turns out that most people can. gluten is not as big a problem as has been made out to be in my research. I'm not saying that it doesn't cause problems with some people, because it does. There are certain people who have a difficulty handling gluten in terms of digestion, but overall I think the problem is wildly overblown. I think the real problem is the herbicides in the food, the glyphosate, and also various pesticides that are used in foods as well. These herbicides and pesticides are synthetic chemicals. They're not part of food, whereas gluten is. Gluten is actually part of the food supply. And it's something that's been consumed by your ancestors and thousands of generations of ancestors before you. Gluten is something that's biocompatible with the human population as it exists today for the most part. And I'm just here to warn people that gluten-free foods can be a healthy part of your diet, but you need to make sure that they're organic. Look for certified organic, that's the USDA organic label. Look for non-GMO Project Verified. And beware that many gluten-free foods that are not organic are actually delivering to you a cancer-causing chemical known as glyphosate that's used for the convenience of the wheat farmers, not to protect your health. It's in fact ravaging your health.